Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's start the class with the prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Om Bhurбхавасвah Tatsavitravare Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. अस्तो मा सद्गम्य तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गम्य मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गम्य ओम सहना भवतु सहना भुनक्तु सवीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ओम शांति शांति शांति. Let's open our books of Yog Darshan. It's also commonly called Yog Sutras because it's in the form of a sutra writing. Sutra. And we all know that there are sutra, there are shloka, there are mantra. So sutra is a very condensed form of writing. All the extra words, all the extra information has been taken out. So that's why it's very important to study slowly and see what the meaning is. What do we really get out of it? So we are on the third chapter, Vibhuti-pad. Okay. So first chapter was a Samadhi-pad, then Sadhana-pad, Vibhuti-pad, the third one, and fourth one is Kavalya-pad. So altogether 4 chapters. Only 196 verses in all the four chapters. So this Sutra number 7 in chapter number 3, Rishi Patanjali is saying, trayam antaranggan poorvebhyah. Trayam means 3, the group of 3. Antar means internal. Angah means limbs. Poorvebhyah in relation to the preceding. So what are the 3 over here? They are the dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So he is saying in relation to the preceding limbs. And how many were those? 5 of them, the preceding limbs. Yama, niyam, asana, pranayama, pratyahara. 5 limbs. So in relation to the preceding limbs, this triad, the dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, is an internal limb. So those are bahiranggan limbs, these are internal limbs. We all know the purpose of yoga is to train and transform the mind. And training that leads to transformation requires practice. And success in practice depends on discipline. Okay? Anushasana. At yoga anushasana. So a set of disciplines arranged in the right order. If we practice, sure, there will be we'll see the movement towards that ultimate goal. So that means that our practice has to be carefully regulated. Then we can discover the mysterious powers of our mind. And Vibhuti, the title of this chapter, Vibhuti, those are the powers. Mind has a lot of powers. Some powers we see in the outer world, some in the inner world. And practically speaking, the mind's perceptible attributes, the properties, the functions, behaviors, are external layers. These are the one I mentioned last week to you. Nirodha, dharam, sanskar, parinam, all those. So the first 5 limbs of yoga helps us train and transforms the external layers of the mind. And the last 3 limbs, antaranggan limbs, they give us the access to the mind's internal dimension. So that means the mind, we use it in the outer world, and the same mind we learn to use in the inner world. The practice of the internal limbs provides the opportunity to discover our inner world. See, that's why we often sing in our bhajans, God, make my mind antarmukhi. See, bahirmukhi means it goes into the outer field, and we need the mind in that area also. But eventually we want our mind to become antarmukhi. And that is why what is found there is defined as siddhi. Vibhuti is the extraordinary accomplishments. So again, the external limbs of yoga deal with our body, senses, the mind's external layers, and the phenomenal world. So that's why practice of the yam, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, that has to do with us and the world. And then the niyams, the second one, shauch, santosh, tap, swadhyay, ishwar pranidhan, will help us to cultivate our inner strength and stay focused on life's higher purpose. Practice of asana help us to maintain our body's resilience and keep our body pain-free. Otherwise, if there's a pain in the body, stiffness in the body, our mind just goes towards the body only. And practice of pranayam expands the field of our vital energy. And the next limb we learned is pratyahar. Pratyahar protects our body and mind from draining our inner buoyancy. Otherwise, we keep on leaking that energy. We got to learn how to control it, cap it. So even though these 5 limbs are characterized as external, from a practical standpoint, they are no less important than the last 3 limbs, which are called internal, antaranga. For example, the practice of the 7th limb, dhyan, is frequently disrupted by fear and worry. So it is important to incorporate the practice of contentment. Okay, if we practice contentment, where there's a fear or worry then? Contentment. Contentment is the component of the niyama. You remember that? See, that's why it's very important to remember this. And only then we can practice it. So in other words, in an attempt to practice the deeper dimensions of yoga, we must not disconnect ourselves from the external layers. Okay, so the bahiranggan sadhana is equally important. But if we keep on doing only bahiranggan and not do the antaranggan, then we are not doing yoga in its entirety. So within the range of sanyam, because this is the technical term we have been learning for the last couple of weeks, Samadhi is more internal than dhyan, and dhyan is more internal than sadhana, dharana. And in an attempt to practice a deeper aspect of sanyam, we must not disconnect ourselves from its more external aspects. So that means we got to practice, do our sadhana in its entirety. So wisdom lies in filling the cracks between the limbs, and even within a limb. This is what is indicated by the placement of this sutra. Okay. So in the preceding sutra, Rishi Patanjali emphasizes the importance of incorporating unique techniques for allowing our experiences to flow seamlessly from the more external levels of consciousness to the deeper levels. And that's why he talked about the pranav sadhana also. Or there is a term which is called pranav anushthan, shooting the target with pranav. Pranav means om. We've been learning about that also. Pranav is a technical term for om, which is indicative of Ishwar and lies beyond the framework of the mind. Om. According to Rishi Patanjali, meditation on pranav accelerates the inward flow of consciousness and eliminates the obstacles to samadhi. Okay. He used that pranav word very beautifully. Go back to those verses. That was in chapter 1. When we are sitting on the firm foundation of pranav anusthana, you really build a sophisticated structure of yoga sadhana. And that's how you feel that obstacles, they keep on, they don't bother you. You can stay on this path firmly. And then move into the further frontiers of samadhi. Because it's not only the lower level of samadhi we have to reach. With our sadhana, we got to reach to the upper level of samadhis too. Okay. So now let's look at the next verse. Verse number 8 of this chapter. Tad api bahi angaha nirbijasy. Tat means that, api means even, bahir means external, angam limb, nirbijasy of a seedless samadhi. Even that, okay, even that means the sanyam, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi is an external limb of nirbij samadhi. So that's why I said, with our sadhana, we got to keep on moving, whether you want to say deeper and deeper or upper and upper. But we got to stick with our sadhana. So dharana, dhyana. First he said dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, they are inner limbs. Now, when you look at the nirbij samadhi, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi are also external limbs. So in other words, always relative. Always relative. So two broad categories, remember that. Sabij and nirbij. Sabij means samadhi with seeds, while nirbij means samadhi without seeds. Or you can say sabij samadhi is a lower samadhi and nirbij samadhi is a higher samadhi. So the term sabij and nirbij describe the two distinct experiences of yoga sadhana. And what are these seeds? Seeds are our sanskars. as long as we are aware of ourselves as the practitioner, aware of the object of our sanyam, aware of the process of focusing on it, we are operating within the range of Sabij Samadhi. So Sabij Samadhi is characterized by the presence of seeds, mental tendencies, and their subtle causes. The practice of Sanyam, the triad of Dharana, Dhyan, and Samadhi, is the practice of Sabij Samadhi. It is important to note that the success in the practice of Sabij Samadhi is largely dependent on the quality of the object of concentration. Because you are choosing the object. So if the object of concentration is inherently illuminating, that practice will have an illuminating experience. With sustained practice, because this practice is not just a one-time practice or 1 month practice. It has to be a sustained practice. The mind becomes calmer, clearer, sharper, and more penetrating. It really becomes increasingly cognizant of both the superficial and its deeper tendencies. The mind has the strength, it has the insight to recognize the causes of inner instability and agitation. Mind can see that. It gains the capacity to rise above its agitating tendencies. And it can stay focused on that object. It can just say that, yeah, it's not important. I don't need to worry. There is no fear. There's no need to be restless. I got to practice. So this is how the practice of Sabij Samadhi undergoes a process of gradual refinement. So we don't jump into the nirbijasy. Right now, as practitioners, most of us has a lot of sanskars, which we have to roast and we have to rise above. And sustained practice will do it. This refinement culminates in recognizing the most subtle contents of the mind, which define our self-identity. We clearly see that our unwillingness to let go of our asmita, that is self-identity, is preventing us from experiencing our oneness with all pervading. I am this, I am that. Identifying with the lower layers is asmita. Or you can say wrong identification is asmita. So the only seed that exists at this stage is the subtle impression created by the Sabij Samadhi itself. Only when that seed is also destroyed, then we are entering into the Nirbij Samadhi. We got to learn how to transcend the domain of the ordinary mind. Ordinary mind works in collaboration with the sense organs and with the cortical brain. We got to rise above that. That's why the pragya world you're familiar with, that's a unique faculty of knowledge that comprehends itself and the objective world both linearly and non-linearly. The most important, the function of pragya is not dependent upon our normal channels of understanding, sensory perception, inference, comparison, postulations, or even a scriptural authority. Because more and more we meditate, we see we are in the realm of pragya. And the most distinctive attribute of pragya is that it is infused with the Dhamma, unalterable law of nature. With this pragya, you become the controller. You feel you are the master. But in order to reach there, practice is needed. When we reach, we are in touch with this pragya. We meditate not because we want something from meditation, but because we cannot live without meditation. We are drawn to our practice as a honeybee is drawn to a flower filled with nectar. Because we have started to get the taste of that nectar, the amrita. The sanskar created by this stage of practice nullifies all previous sanskars. At this stage, the sanskar of practice that arises from the mind and subsides in it is described as dharam meg. Cloud of virtues. And the experience of it is dharam meg samadhi. Dharam meg samadhi is the transitional stage between the sabij and the nirbij. From the standpoint of sabij samadhi, it is a transcendental stage. But from the standpoint of nirbij samadhi, it is a lower stage. Again, there is a relativity over there. So dharam meg samadhi emerges when the triad of dharana, dhyan, and samadhi has become one undivided continuum of experience. And this experience is no longer intercepted by the cognition of the process of samadhi or meditation. The feeling of ourselves as the meditator and the process of meditation has dissolved into the object of meditation. The mind and the asmita, the awareness that claims ownership of the mind, that is the asmita, are totally absorbed into this. This is what he meant by in the first chapter when he said samapati. That is a technical term. It's kind of a level of absorption, samapati. It transforms our mind and our individuated sense of I-amness into this pranic pulsation. You are breathing and you absorb yourself in there. We are aware of unborn and undying Pran Shakti as the core of our being. We see our core being. We see that we are beginningless and endless. We see that there's a freedom from the cycle of death and birth in its real nature. That is the highest form of dispassion. So dharam meg, the clouds of virtues, is made of this degree of dispassion. So that's why the dispassion, the vairagya, and the abhyas both are needed. And abhyas, which is continuous, uninterrupted, with full faith, and dispassion, which is not just a lower dispassion, not just a parvairagya, but parvairagya. When this cloud rains, because megh means cloud, every aspect of our being becomes saturated with the guiding and nourishing Shakti of divine grace. This student or this seeker is fully enlightened, nourished and protected. Dharam megh. Actually, this dharam megh samadhi is beyond the range of our practice. Okay, we just reach there with the grace. Our effort is just to do the practice wholeheartedly. The realm of consciousness over here is called parvairagya. Parvairagya. You don't even care for any kind of a virtues showering upon you. They shower, but no desire in your mind at all, because you know that you are not the mind. You're totally disconnected. So dispassion and constant awareness of divine will are the locus of these yogis. They are not yet one with Ishvara, but they are not even part of this objective world. They are not bound by the time, space, and causation, and they are yet not with that absolute reality. Who created the time, space, and causation? In other words, dharam megh samadhi transcends sabid samadhi, yet it is somewhat below nirbijasy samadhi. So from the standpoint of yogis who have reached and tasted dharam megh samadhi, the entire range of sabid samadhi is external. They use sabid samadhi as a springboard to reach nirbij, the highest state of samadhi, which is devoid of even the most subtle sanskar, the sanskar of duality. Now, what do we need to do? Sure, we are following the external limbs. We are following the internal limbs also. In our practice, we see certain sanskars, they arising, some are subsiding. What do we really need to do? How do we continue our practice? That is the subject of the next sutra. See how systematically this great Rishi is taking us further and further towards our aim. Verse number 9. Vyutthananirodhasanskarayorabhibhava pradurbhavau nirodhakshannachittanvayo nirodhaparinamah. So this is one of the long words. So let's break it down so that you understand each word. Vyutthananirodhasanskarayorabhibhava. subtle impressions of an agitated and a well-contained mind. Vyutthan and nirodha. Nirodha is a constraint, and vyutthan is like an ordinary mind, agitated mind. So subtle impressions of an agitated and of a well-contained mind. Abhibha pradurbhavau. Decline and rise. Nirodha, confinement. Kshan, moment. Chit means the deeper mind. Anvya, yoking. Nirodha, confinement. Parinamah, result. The decline of sanskars that cause mental agitation, and the rise of sanskars that impel the mind to confine itself to the object of concentration. So that means less and less distractions, more and more control over your mind. That introduce a brief moment of time filled with the essence of self-restraint. Yoking the mind to that moment results in mastery over its roaming tendencies. Okay? So in the beginning, mind will be less restrained. As you keep on practicing, the mind will be more and more restrained. There's a less and less time when the mind is restless or mind is not focused. And he says, yoking the mind to that moment results in mastery over its roaming tendencies. So the deeper causes of the roaming tendencies and how to uproot them once and for all. That's what he's talking about. The sanskars of mental agitation and distraction are actually defining attributes of chitta. Because chitta has all those sanskars. And the disturbing sanskars, agitated sanskars, restless sanskars, they will erupt. But with the help of the practice. It's not that you are suppressing them, you disassociate with them. And we all know that there are two sources of disturbance, external and internal. External disturbance originates in the objective world, and it's carried by the senses, external. And when we disconnect our senses from their corresponding objects, this form of a disturbance vanishes. That's why in meditation, what do? Close our eyes, close our ears, close our nose. We are disconnecting our senses from the external world. But the internal disturbance, which originates in the world of our memories, this disturbance is not carried by our senses. Furthermore, this form of disturbance courses through the mind uninvited. And disconnecting the mind from this form of disturbance is difficult. So external and internal. When we try to restrain the mind for disturbing thoughts by engaging it elsewhere, it is external restraint. This is also called a passive restraint. But internal restraint originates in the world of our memories, and they are in the form of disturbing thoughts. So what do we do about those? That's why The Guru gives us a mantra. Guru gives us a form. You take your mind on that. That's why they say that power of the Guru's form or the Isht's form and the power of the mantra will help you get rid of the internal disturbances. So external disturbance, disconnect your senses. Internal disturbance, use that. The tools which are given to you by your Guru. We got to cultivate this habit. This is like a new impression we are following. So there was a disturbance in the mind. Now we are just finding that peace by looking at, by being connected with that mantra and with that form. By practice, this kind of a sanskar will be stronger. This is also a sanskar. But this sanskar is taking us towards our aim. The other sanskars, they were taking us towards this material world. So this is also called practice of vairagya. Not just only during our meditation, rest of the day also. If we keep on practicing it. Because vairagya is more than just letting go. Vairagya is an active process of cultivating the power of discernment and the inner strength to disassociate ourselves from thoughts and feelings that distract our mind. So that's why when we connect our mind with this higher power, we are disconnecting with the lower. So let me repeat it again. The vairagya is more than simply letting go. It is an active process of cultivating the power of discernment and the inner strength. Inner strength to disassociate ourselves from thoughts and feelings that distract our mind from the object of sanya. That's also vairagya. Actually, we talked about it in detail in the first chapter, verse number 15. There was a term, yatmana, isolating prominent currents of distracting and disturbing thoughts. Then vyatirek, that also I explained it to you. Because according to our sanskars, maybe there is one particular object is taking your mind away from this source. Work on that. Ek indriya. So finally, the practice of vairagya entails cultivating a state of desirelessness. Desirelessness, vashikar. So this we learned in the first chapter actually. Go back to that. Because all that is needed if you want to reach to that nirbijasy samadhi, or even a sabid samadhi, or movement towards a dharmic samadhi, all of this is needed. So the sanskars of nirodha are created through a consistent, sustained practice of abhyas. So if somebody says, I cannot do that, the Guru says, practice. Practice. Abhyas is an earnest attempt to anchor the mind in an object. That's why we keep the form of our Guru, God, everywhere. So that mind goes there again and again and again. Even when we are working, driving, doing anything, we want to have the form in the outer world. Then eventually it is imprinted in our mind. It is important to remember that no matter how subtle and intangible the object, it is always associated with the time and space. Whenever an object comes into our mind's eyes, we give it a room in our mind. That's how this mental focus is there. Abhyas entails remaining so fully focused on that object of our concentration that the mind is not aware of any other thoughts or mental tendencies. No other thoughts, just only that. Making the effort sincerely for a prolonged period of time with the reverence of that practice is abhyas. And that's how we cultivate nirodha sanskars. That's how we cultivate that power to restrain the mind in a well-defined space. And these sanskars we are creating through our meditation now. Quality of alertness and believing the importance of meditation are very important. Rise of nirodha sanskars lead the mind to a higher level of stability. Nirodha sanskar. So mantra, the precise method of meditation, you can use the outer form or you can use the mantras, doesn't matter. Those are the different techniques. Whatever works for you. You got to learn how to apply these tools and yield the result so that our mind is clean and mind is restful. So in this sutra, Rishi Patanjali is telling us that in order to progress and finally reach the furthest frontier of Sanyama, we must identify the instant when all cognitions except the cognition pertaining to the object of concentration have come to halt. So that level of alertness is needed. And he gave the term over here to that, nirodhakshan. So that means it might be a momentarily. Kshan means a moment, a minute segment of time. Okay, nirodhakshan. Then we got to learn how to increase that time span of that nirodha. So yoking the mind to the segment of time marked by nirodha. When this experience is repeated through consistent practice, the subtle impressions of this experience become potent. And our practice matures. This experience arises from the depths of our mind, of its own accord. And creating the subtle impressions of the nirodha initially requires effort, but ultimately it becomes spontaneous. So in the advanced stage of Sabid Samadhi, self-effort comes to an end and we are led to the final state practice Nirbijasy Samadhi. And in the next verse, we'll see why the subtle impressions of Nirodha are not intercepted by roaming tendencies of the mind. Why this mind has been controlled. How did that happen? We'll look at that next week. So until then, practice. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.